One more thing to discuss with you, Gustavo, from the world of Brazilian football. And I don't know, Herc, if, one of your clubs in Mexico, maybe Tigres, maybe Santos, maybe Xolos.
Tecos, I had a reception.
Okay, if you ever had the helicopter presentation that Memphis Depay got at Corinthians. Obviously, this is a story that's gotten a lot of international headlines because of what Ronald Koeman said. But let's get the Brazilian perspective on it here, Gustavo. This seems like a massive deal. How big of a moment is Memphis Depay's arrival in Brazilian soccer?
It is for sure. Corinthians, for everybody to understand, Corinthians is the second team with most fans in Brazil. It's a giant in Brazil, plays in São Paulo, the biggest city in Brazil, and has a massive fan base. So for Brazil, for the Brazilian football, it is a massive hiring. Memphis Depay is a 31 years old player who could be playing in one of the top 5 leagues here in Europe, for sure. So we're talking about a player who could be playing here in Europe in a very good team. He was playing for Atletico de Madrid. He was not playing for a small team in Netherlands. We're not talking about a player who is 36, 37 years old and he's going to finish his career in Brazil. No, we're talking about a player with 31 years old who could be playing here. So it's a massive hiring for sure. To explain also how Corinthians got this deal. Corinthians, and it is also very polemic because Corinthians has a huge debt, and with the new sponsor of Corinthians, which is a Bet Deal site, this main sponsor promised to Corinthians to pay for a new player, and they wanted that this new player would be an international signing. So they had the money for that, even with Corinthians with so many debts. So Corinthians has the debts, has to pay to many players, has these problems, but they had, with the main sponsor, this deal to hire a new player and an international player. And they saw the opportunity with Memphis Depay, who left Atletico de Madrid for free last season. He had 1 year still in contract with Alet, but he had some problems with injuries. He was not the first option for Diego Simeone, and it's very hard to work with Simeone if you're not his main option. And Corinthians saw this opportunity. And now we're going to see what happens with Memphis. He already talked to the press. He had some talking with the fans also. He's very motivated to play with Corinthians. He didn't participate in the last match of Corinthians, that Corinthians beat Juventude in the quarterfinals of Copa do Brasil, the Brazil's Cup. And Corinthians advanced to the semifinals. Memphis was in the stadium, and he could see the craziness with the fans because Corinthians is a very passionate team.
I wonder if any Major League Soccer teams were interested in Memphis Depay. I'm kind of surprised he didn't, if not end up here, at least flirt here a little bit. I wanted to ask you something about Brazilian soccer. And we'll get Gustavo's thoughts on this as well. Piojo Alvarado, Mexican international, was linked to Flamengo. There's a lot of discussion on Mexico about whether going to Brazil would be like a step up for him from Mexico. In the end, he decides to stay with Chivas. I think he's just signed a contract.
Chivas didn't even entertain the offer.
2028.
Yeah.
What did you think of that? Would you think it would have been an upgrade for him to go to the Brazilian league?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely. People don't realize how high level the Brazilian league is and the amount of money that it's in Brazilian football. I'm not surprised that Memphis ends up in Brazil. Like I wasn't surprised that Luis Suarez ended up in Brazil. And by the way, used Brazilian football to raise his level in a way that people didn't realize he could. People thought he was done. And he came in and completely dominated. Can Memphis dominate? It's been quite some time since we've seen Memphis be a serviceable player at the club level. Certainly Memphis, I believe the first year with Barcelona was serviceable. That was 3 years ago. His club situation or his club form has taken a massive dip, but he's a different player with the national team. He's an absolute beast with the national team, scores a goal at pretty much every other game. That's his ratio. So it remains to be seen what he can do at Corinthians, but you should strive for your players to play at higher levels. I think of Uruguay, Colombia, some of these teams, and so maybe some of those players don't play at the highest of levels in the top 5 leagues, but you've got some very good players scattered throughout South America in teams like the Brazilian League, and those players become very good players. So it would have raised Roberto Alvarado's level, which in turn would have raised the Mexican national team level.
Gustavo, did you hear anything about this Piojo Alvarado to Flamengo, and what do you think about him turning down the deal?
Yeah, Flamengo wanted to sign him, but he rejected the offer. I think that also this offer shows the strength, the financial strength of the Brazilian league. Nowadays, you have clubs like Flamengo, Corinthians, Palmeiras, and some other clubs who can go to the Mexican league, who can go to the main European top leagues and offer huge amount of money to these players and also to the clubs. Flamengo has just hired, for example, Carlos Alcaraz. Has got the player from the Premier League. So the Brazilian league nowadays is so ahead of the other South American leagues. And we were used to see the Mexican league paying so well also, but now I think that Alvarado, he decided to stay there. He has a very good connection with his club, but I think that Brazilian league nowadays is really ahead of any other league, not only in South America, but in the whole America. Today I talked to Geraldo Becker, the forward of Real Sociedad, in the media day of the club. And I asked him about the Memphis move, about the European players moving to South America. And he said, man, you have to understand that Hendrick, for example, was playing there for some weeks ago. So the Brazilian league, we have a really good quality in the players who are playing now in the Brazilian league. Of course, that we have so many problems. The calendar in Brazil, it's very, very complicated. It's more complicated than we see in the rest of the world because we have one more championship there that is called the state championship, who press the whole calendar to the end of the year. So I think that for these European players, they're gonna suffer a little bit with the quality of some pits in Brazil and with the calendar. About Alvarado, as I said, I think that shows this financial strength of the Brazilian league and clubs like Flamengo who can offer this kind of money.
Suriname? Is that Geraldo Becker, Suriname?
Yes, exactly. Another CONCACAFer there. All right, Gustavo Hoffman, man, great stuff. I would say good night, but I know I'm just telling you goodbye because you're going to go watch that Buffalo Bills game. We can see the helmet there in the background. Very well done from you.